Before we dig into the content of tonight, I'd like to recognize we have two of our elected officials, our board members in the room. So I would just like to thank Nichelle Nichols and Blair Mosner-Feltham. I don't see Blair here, but Nichelle, would you just raise your hand? And
hey everyone, thanks for coming.
Thank you. And here comes Blair Mosner-Feltham, our vice president of the board. Thank you both for being here. I also hope that before you came into the auditorium, you had the pleasure of enjoying the dinner that was put together for tonight. That dinner was put together by our food and nutrition staff. What you were able to experience tonight are some of our new menu options that our students received during their hot lunch at the school. How many people ate some of the lunch? Or the dinner, I mean. Yeah, how was it? All right, I see thumbs up. So, good new menu options. Our food and nutrition staff is working really hard. A couple of things that I want to talk about before I share a video from Dr. Gothard. I want to make sure that everyone understands tonight you are going to see a lot of information. You are going to see a lot of data and probably more information that you're going to be able to fully digest. Tonight is really about giving you a lot of background data, background information, in order for you to understand where we are trying to go. All of this information is available on our website. At the end of our presentation, we will share the website with you. You can read our full data report, you can dig into the scenarios that we will show tonight, and there's much more information there. So please note that while tonight you will feel like there's a lot of information, there is other ways for you to be able to continue to engage in the learning after tonight. It's also important to note that tonight is the first of many opportunities for community input. We had our first session last night at La Follette, so tonight is number 2. We're doing about 14 sessions across the next few weeks, and then we will be doing community input sessions again in the fall. So this is one of many opportunities for you to get information on our Building for the Future plan, as well as share your voice with us. At this time, I'd like to share a video from our superintendent, Dr. Gothard.
Hello, I'm Joe Gothard, Superintendent of the Madison Metropolitan School District. Thank you for joining us at our Building for the Future community input sessions. Madison is growing faster than anyone could have imagined. By 2050, more than 100,000 new people are expected to call Madison home. And right now, the City of Madison has plans for approximately 15,000 new housing units, many of which are already under construction or in development. This is amazing growth, and it's something that Madison has experienced before. Between 1970 and 2020, our population grew from approximately 170,000 to 270,000 people. The difference? We're seeing 50 years of growth packed within 25 years. That rapid growth is going to have an impact on MMSD, and our responsibility is to plan proactively. We want to ensure that our schools have the capacity, resources, and programming to provide strong educational experiences for all students. And you are an important part of this work. Our community's voice, your voice matters. We want to hear your input and your ideas. Thank you again for being here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving your time to help strengthen MMSD as a destination school district.
So as Dr. Gothard said, we have a plan called Building for the Future. This plan is to ensure that we are prioritizing and thinking about the growth that is happening in Madison, and that our schools proactively can be able to handle the growth that is happening. We also know that across the state of Wisconsin, populations are declining. However, the area of Madison and Dane County is one of the few counties in the state of Wisconsin that is expected to grow over the next now 24 years, so 100,000 new neighbors by 2050. This presents a real opportunity for us in MMSD. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the attendance area and the boundary review. We also are focused on an enrollment strategy. So as these 100,000 people join us here in Madison, they choose MMSD as their school district of choice. There's lots of options these days, and we want to ensure that the students and families are choosing MMSD. But in order for them to do that, we need to understand what their experiences should be and what families are looking for. So our Building for the Future plan that we are focused on in collaboration with the firm MGT is to assess our current school attendance areas and our district boundaries. Currently, we have some schools that have enough space to account for new students and families that may come to Madison. Some of our other schools don't have space. So we want to really be thinking about balancing our utilization across our schools and thinking about how all of our schools are going to be able to take on new students and families. We also own 2 plots of land, both on the far east side and the far west side. We want to take that into consideration when thinking about where the growth is happening and if there's a need to consider new schools. We want to evaluate our current programs and options. Right now, in our district, 21 of our school sites have dual language immersion programming for Spanish. And we have 2 schools that offer Hmong bilingual programming. We want to understand if we should consider other options for families. In addition to that, we have a goal of ensuring that every one of our elementary schools has full day 4K. Free full day 4K for every one of our students and families. That currently is not possible because we don't have enough space across all of our schools. So we want to do some more examination around where changes may need to be in order to meet that goal. And most importantly, why all of you are here tonight is to understand what our families value and what our families want for their child's educational experience. Are there things that we need to consider that we currently don't offer? While the majority of tonight is going to be us presenting to you, we will have an interactive poll that you will be able to give input with, and we are also going to save the last 15 minutes of our presentation to do some Q&A. So please know you might have gotten some note cards as you came in, jot down your questions, and we'll spend some time at the end engaging in questions and answers. So we also know that in order to think about all of the things I just said, we have to have some ways to make some decisions or some recommendations. And so some of the things that have come to what we call our guiding principles that were from a survey we did in the fall and also in conversations with our Board of Education is to ensure that we're thinking about balanced utilization across our schools. How are we ensuring that we don't have schools that are overcrowded and we don't have schools that are under-enrolled? How are we thinking about balanced demographics across our schools to the greatest extent possible? If we make changes, are we going to overburden one particular group or not? We want to take that into consideration. What we've heard a lot about is transportation and having neighborhood schools. We've heard from families that it's really hard to have their students on a bus for 45 minutes or more, to pass 1 or 2 elementary schools to get to their assigned school. So we want to think about how we can create more efficient transportation, more walkability, and easier access to schools. We also want to ensure that through all of that, we are minimizing the impact to the greatest extent possible and to the smallest number of people. We know change needs to happen. We know that there is going to be change, but where that change is and how we think about that change, we don't know yet because we need to hear from all of you, but we want to be very thoughtful around the impact and who is impacted. And as I mentioned before, programming. It's really important for us to be thinking about programming, the types of programming we offer, and what we might not offer yet that we want to consider. So these are some of the ways we're going to have to make decisions. These guiding principles will be what we use as we go through these processes with our community to get their input and to continue to make refinement before we bring forth a final set of recommendations. So what is tonight about? Tonight is the first of many opportunities in the next year. There will be multiple community input sessions. Each time that we do community input sessions, we'll get closer to what we think our final set of recommendations are. It's also a chance for you to learn about this work building for the future. What is this work and why is it important to both the entire system and you individually? We also want to make sure we hear your perspective so that the next time we do community input, we have better drafts for you to look at based on the input. What it is not a final or near final plan. We don't have a plan in our back pocket. We won't know what that plan is until we have enough community voice. And it is not time for decisions. We have a long runway before we get to a final set of decisions. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over to our partners is that tonight is about looking at elementary schools. In the fall, we'll look at middle schools, and then we'll have continued conversations around more further refined scenarios. So what tonight will be is that you'll see most of our middle schools. There's impacts for middle school and high school, but tonight is about elementary. And I'll just reiterate what I said before. This is draft. If you think about a writing process and you start generating ideas, tonight is our first draft of our best thinking, but we need your voice to continue to make it better before we get to a final product. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partner, Dr. Richards from MGT, who we have been working with and has really been helping guide our work. Dr. Richards.
Thank you. Well, there we go. Well, thank you, and thank you for taking this time out of your night to come and join us for what is a very important process. I want to echo a few things that were presented. Oh, I should introduce myself, I guess. I am Dr. Lance Richards. I'm from Southern Indiana. I am a 35-year public educator, retired school superintendent, elementary principal, junior, middle school and high school English teacher. Still have a licensed CDL, so if we get in a jam, I can drive the yellow limousine and get us out of here. So I always have that in my back pocket. And, and if this thing doesn't work out, I can always go back to driving a bus. I want to just speak a little bit to the process here in terms of, she mentioned this as a draft. I would kind of think of it in terms of a game. This is Monopoly, this is Go. If this is dominoes, it's that first domino that you lay down on the board. In an effort of transparency, we're going to bring you a lot of information tonight. And it's all the information that the district's having to consider in making a decision going forward. So who is MGT? MGT is a company that was actually founded by educators 50 years ago to help school communities with these kinds of decisions. We'll look at schools, we'll look at demographics, we'll look at facilities, but it's all about school people helping school people make important decisions for their school communities. 100 years of combined experience. We've done hundreds and hundreds of these. This is my 4th year with MGT, and I have been involved in partnership with Monica, and I'll let Monica and Marcy introduce themselves momentarily, but in partnership with these folks, well over 100 of these sessions in these 4 years, and kind of talking with folks and gathering insights from communities. And I would also stress that no decision's been made, no final, this is the starting point of the process to gather the community inputs. Now, what goes into a student forecast? You can think of it kind of like cake baking. And so the processes are here on the left. You kind of heat the oven. So we're going to look at data sets for analysis. We're going to look at all the numbers for your district in terms of your student populations. We're going to create forecast factors that we're going to talk about tonight, and then we're going to apply those to the data. So that's very broad. So what does that really mean? Well, we're going to look at historic birth factors. And here's the thing we know about birth factors. I'm not giving away any surprises. Folks are having smaller families. They're having delayed childbirths. How do these things impact your schools? Because the kids that are born today are your kindergartners 5 years from now. And how many of those kids show up in your schools? So we lean into your kindergarten classes. Mobility factors are those kids that come in and out. So across the year, how many additional kids join your students or your buildings? How many kids move away in that time frame? And how does that trend line work across the district? And that takes in a lot of things. That's that's existing home sales. That's if Mrs. Smith down the way downsizes and moves to a patio home, that home opens up, those kids move in. How do those things impact your schools? And that affects all student cohorts, K through 12. And then student yield factors, that's just a fancy way of saying how many kids show up when you build a new house. How many kids show up from an apartment or a duplex or all those things. We work with county and city officials and district officials to map out all these parcels. We're going to share that map with you tonight. But how do those things come down? How many kids can we expect as we phase in all this residential development that is coming into your community? And all of those things sift down into the student forecast and that cake that we baked in terms of student forecasting. So at this point, I'll turn it over to my partner, Marcy Horner.
Sir? Hello, I'm going to stand up here because I'm not as tall as Lance and I feel like I can actually see you from here. My name is Marcy Horner and I'm a project manager. I get the fortunate job of analyzing the data, analyzing the data. I've actually spent 14 years in the school districts where I live, close to where I live, and so this is what I did for my own school district and I really enjoy it. You may see that as I get super excited about data and birth rates and things like that. I will try to contain myself, but to me, this is fascinating stuff. Now, I understand that some of the information I'm going to provide you is going to be perhaps too granular for you, and it might not be of interest at that granular level. Some of you may really find it fascinating, but we really want to make sure that you have all of the information that we're also providing the district, because that is the foundation of the decision making. So we're starting off, and I don't know if anybody is familiar with GIS or Geographic Information System, but we use this to think spatially and to analyze data spatially. So we have attendance areas all mapped out. We have our students that are geocoded. In other words, each student we're able to see a dot on the map of where they live and analyze that within the attendance area in which they live. We also divide the district into small geographical areas that we call them study areas, and we actually look at the data in that granular level. And also the residential development is going to be, and you'll see a map where we actually have these polygons that show the residential development, so we do that analysis as well. Here's an image that will show you of the students as we have them geocoded again. This is a heat map where you can see the density of the student population. That bright yellow is the student population where it's most dense, and then you can see that the sparse areas are more in those blue. But this allows you, again, to see, if you're not already familiar with where the most populated students reside. Now, a lot of numbers here, and I'm going to break this down for you. And again, this is all of this information is on the website. So if you find this fascinating like I do, you're welcome to dive into it a little bit more. I'm going to try to just spend a short amount of time on this. But what this is again, allows us to see the data spatially. We, again, place those student dots, so where they live on the map, and we look to see where they live in relation to the attendance area that they reside in. So as you read across the rows of this table, you can see the attendance area where students live. As you read down the columns, you see where they are enrolled. This is essentially where the boundaries meet the policies or the programs. So let me give you, I do like to give some examples. I usually just point out the top school. So the top school is alphabetical, and it's Anana. So in that attendance area, if you can see, and I know this is a lot of numbers and they're really small, and I apologize for that, but I think it's important that everybody is represented here. All schools are represented here. And this is just elementary. We're just looking at elementary right now. So this shows that there are 414 4K through 5th grade students that live in that attendance area. Of that 414, there are 366 students that are enrolled at that school. So they are enrolled at the school that they live in. The other students, the students that are enrolled in other schools are shown as you read across the row. So where they live is in the row, and where they are enrolled is the column. Now, if you want to understand where the enrollment of the school is, you can read down the column. So taking that first school as an example, you can see down at the bottom is a total of enrollment. That's 449 students that are enrolled there. Now, these are the total enrolled, but this row right here, these show the inter-district transfers. Those aren't the resident students. Those are students coming in from outside of the district. The resident students total 433. So we know that 366 live in that attendance area. Then 2 live in the next attendance area, Chavez, 2 live in Crestwood, and so on. So you can then see where the enrolled students live. Now again, this is probably not digestible in this quick format, but it is information that we process and we analyze and sort through with the district leadership, and it's really good information to have as well. The schools, just to note, is the 2 schools on the far right column. Those are schools that don't have a boundary, but they still have an enrollment, so you can see where those students live. This shows those same numbers. So we were talking about Anana. There was 414 students that live in that attendance area. So the resident utilization, looking at the capacities of the schools, the resident utilization of that school is right next to that number. So this column here shows the resident utilization. So that means if all of the students that live in that attendance area, and only those students, enroll at that school, that would be the utilization. The next set of columns are the actual enrollment numbers and the enrolled utilization. It's really important as we talk about forecasting, because we're doing it at such a micro level, that we understand the trends of where people live. But we also want to know where they're enrolled. So we see that here. The next columns over shows the transfers of students that live within and out of within the Madison boundaries, so that you can see not all students go to the boundary or the school where they reside. And then the final 2 columns, this shows the number of students that are at that school that are coming in from outside of the district. So again, I know this is a lot of information, and all of the elementary schools are listed here, but just wanting you to be aware that this is information that we are able to process, analyze, and look at more deeply. We do have this utilization analysis for the middle schools and high schools as well. So let me give you a chance to look at that, as some of you may be part of those schools and attendance areas with kids that age. We're not looking at the attendance area, or we're not looking at the middle school or high school boundaries right now. We are just focusing on the elementary, but I didn't want to leave them out, as this slide is important to see. All right, moving on. So Dr. Richards talked a little bit about the forecast factors, and this is where I start getting really excited. I'm going to try to contain it. Again, these are all that are applied to the resident student population. So the first is your births. So this is showing, let me just orient you to what you see in this chart. These numbers at the top, with these dark blue lines, these are the count of births. These are gathered from the Department of Health and Welfare, and they are gathered by zip code. It's not a national trend, it's gathered by zip code. So these are the numbers of the births that are born in this area. These shorter bars down here is the kindergarten cohort that reside within the district. I'm going to just point out these labels down here. The BY stands for birth year, and the SY stands for school year. So we are looking at kindergarten students in relationship to the birth year 5 years previous. And this line right here is showing us the percentage of students that are coming in as kindergartners compared to who was born 5 years previous. This way we understand that as students, as the birth rates go up and down, 5 years later those kindergarten students are typically going up and down as well. This is the percentage. This column right here in pink is shown to show you this current school year. This is data that we pulled as of the beginning of October. And these 3 bars to the left are the 3 historic years of kindergarten, and the 4 bars to the right are projected kindergarten numbers. Now, if the district starts, if more students are coming in than that 51%, 52%, if the district starts bringing in more students, then the birth rate that is applied in the forecast goes up. But this is important to see and recognize, because this leads into the next, well, we don't know, right? We don't know who's coming. What we do know is the number of children that have been born. The next slide is the mobility factor. Now, you might know this as a cohort survival rate, similar to that, although it is done geographically. So essentially, what it is looking at is how many kids that you have in one of the grades, like kindergarten, and then how many came back in first grade, and so on. So it could be 6th grade to 7th grade. It's that grade that they progress into. And this is done, again, by attendance area. The remaining schools are on the next slide, and I'll advance to that in a moment. But I wanted to just point out a couple of things. So these are well, I guess I'm advancing to it now. These labels are here are showing you those K to 1, 1 to 2, so that advancement. These here are not where they're enrolled, it is where they're residing. And the colors are showing, the blue is showing anything greater than 1, and the yellow is showing anything less than 1. So let me go back here because it shows you this. If essentially how it is applied is if we're looking at, so we are looking at 4 years of student data, which is 3 years of change. We'll average that out, what has happened in the last 4 years of student data as they've progressed, and you see an average of, in this example, it would be 1.04. So in other words, if there were 100 kindergarten students and the mobility is 1.04, then we would project that there would be 104 first grade students. And that is how we view this and continue that perpetuation in those attendance areas. So moving back on to here, what this often tracks is it tracks the in and out movement of existing homes. This is not showing you new residential development. This is only showing what is happening in existing homes. So this could show where neighborhoods might be regenerating. It could show where neighborhoods are aging out or where there's a high turnover in homes. You can see by attendance areas that, like I said, might be consistently yellow would be those that are slowly, and we use aging out in this term, but it's possibly getting older and their kids have graduated and they're staying in the same home that they were in when their kids were in school, like my own family. So this is, again, really good information and also a factor that we use to understand what is going to continue happening within the district. And the last factor that we talk about is the student yield factor. This is, again, understanding how many students you've gained when we look at the homes that have been built in the near past. So we look at the homes that have been built in the last 10 years, how many students you've gained from it, to understand how many students to expect from future housing. The numbers here at the bottom is what we're going to look at right now. This first column is your single-family detached homes. So the student yield factor for that housing type is 0.203, 0.2. What that means is the district can expect to gain 20 students for every 100 new homes built. And that's across the grade levels of kindergarten through 12. So that's across 13 grade levels. The next one is your single family attached, and that drops a little bit to 0.125. Apartments are really low. That drops down to 0.01. So there's very few students coming from new apartment complexes. Affordable housing types, however, is 0.385. So that's a much larger number than the others. So that means that you're going to expect to gain more students from affordable housing. These numbers are directly applied in areas that there are residential developments or new housing types coming in. So here's the map I told you about where we have polygons that show where new residential developments are. This is data that we gathered. We did have to create a stopping point, which was December 1st, and said this is all that we're going to gather so we can create the forecast. So there might be more that have been approved since this map was created, but this was as of December 1st. I'll show you a map with my next slide has some zoomed in, but I want to point out a couple statistics that are over here on the left. We have 120 active or planned developments that we're looking at. That is over 1,200 units that are included in the forecast. 24% of those are in one of the attendance areas, the Franklin and Randall attendance area, and 81% of those units are apartments. Here's those other maps that I was telling you about so that you can see, if possible, I know these polygons are a little bit smaller, but again, all of this information is going to be, or is already on the website, just to show you those areas where there are residential developments. And as Dr. Richards said, all of this is, all of these are factors, or if we're baking a cake, ingredients to give us a forecast. Here is a bar chart showing the same information, or that information that you saw on the map in this form. So you can see elementary schools right around here. You can see the number of units in the forecast. And then also you can see the middle schools that they're associated with. So yes, there are lots of, these taller bar charts, or taller bars are showing areas that have a lot more units. But over here you can see what these colors represent. The gray is the single family detached, the lighter blue single family attached, pink is the apartments, and a darker blue is the affordable. So this is all information that we process and put together to create the forecast. So let me show you that forecast now, because again, this is important, and it's important, I think, for you to understand that we're not just looking at the students that are living in your that are living in the district right now. We're planning ahead to understand what we can anticipate for the future. So before I go through this, I'm going to kind of walk you through this, but I do first want to just point out how the factors are impacting the forecast. So again, the mobility factor, we understand how that relates to students going from one grade to the next grade. The impact from the housing projects is all 13K through 12th grade students, and that is impacting all of our students, all of the students where there's residential development. And the last one is the birth rates, to understand, again, not just kindergarten, but also kindergarten, and the next year it would be kindergarten and first. The year after that, kindergarten first, second, third. So if there is a way, or if the more students come in, a larger percentage of kindergarten students come in that were born 5 years previous, then those numbers could increase. So that's an opportunity there, I think. This right here, advance again, this right here is just looking at the resident population. You see these first 3 columns here, consistent with our other bar charts where we're showing you the historic numbers. You'll see the current here right in the lighter blue column, and then 5 forecasted years. And then breaking down by school grade type, or by grade configuration as well. Totaling all of the district students that are enrolled, resident and enrolled, you see these numbers here, and just a slight downward trend in the enrolled population. I'm letting you process a little bit. All right. So I told you that we actually have small study areas that we do this forecast. What we're actually doing is creating a forecast for these small study areas, which is typically about the size of a neighborhood, maybe even less if it's a really densely populated neighborhood. But what I want to show you here, I think the key takeaway is we're not looking just at the district as a whole. We're actually looking at how the birth factors, the mobility, and the residential development is creating a forecast in these small areas. So the areas that are dark green, or green if you're able to see that, are the areas that we're expecting to see growth over the next 5 years. The areas or study areas that show the red and the orange, those are areas that we're expecting to see decline. Combine all that for that district forecast and you get those numbers that I showed you in the previous slide. I don't know, can you tell I love charts, bar charts? So I'm a visual person. You throw numbers in a table up to me and I really like to see, be able to see them in a more visual way. So what this is, it is just showing the resident capacity of, the elementary resident versus the capacity. Similar to what I had shown you on a previous, but again, this now has those forecasted numbers for each of the school attendance areas. So the numbers I showed you before are the ones in the gray bar. The pink, more pink color is the projection from 2030. We're also preparing for the future, so also continuing that trend through 2035 as well, knowing that a lot can happen in those last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of the forecast. This is the first part of the alphabet, so I'll go on to the next slide, but I want to give you a chance to look at what we're projecting. These numbers that are here with this bar represents the capacities. So you can see where the resident population fits into the capacity and where they might not. And that might change, right? You might have a school that doesn't fit, but is going to fit because of a decline, or you might have a school that is projected to grow, or an attendance area that is projected to increase. And here is the second half of the alphabet. And let me just point out, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, there are 3 schools that share an attendance, no, there are 6 schools. They share an attendance area. These are schools that are K2 and 3-5 schools, but they have the same attendance area. So those are, the capacities are combined, and so is the population numbers combined. That is why you see Midvale and Lincoln together, and Midvale, Lincoln, Franklin and Randall, and Latham and Marquette. Just wanted to point out in case you're looking for those schools individually and can't find them. Also, let me just mention here this last section. There is a section, we're going to cover this over in our next little discussion point, but there's an area that is an optional area that students are able to choose the option of either Crestwood or Stevens, and that's the population in that area. It's really important as we look forward to boundary planning and redistricting that we are using resident projections. We want to be able to accommodate the students that live in the attendance area, and that is a much more stable and firm number as opposed to the enrollment numbers, which can deviate because of programs, policies, and even preference. So the resident projections reveal the true geographic demand of that area. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Richards.
So, Assistant Superintendent Green mentioned earlier the guiding principles, the kind of the process for taking a look at what we're going to be doing in terms of starting this conversation. So these guiding principles, we put I like these up this way because they're like ping pong balls. And the Powerball or the state lotto, they put the ping pong balls in there and they bounce around and they pull them out of that little sleeve, and that's how they generate the numbers. The guiding principles many times work like that because it's very hard for one of them to be completely dominant over all the others because they can conflict with one another depending on utilization, depending on the location of the schools, in terms of the demographics of the neighborhood. So they can, these things do, though, begin to frame the conversations around those options. But they can basically bounce off of one another and create. So you'll look at some of these options and go, well, that doesn't really work for neighborhood schools, but it might work for utilization. But it also may improve transportation, but it may impact more students. And so all of those things we have to kind of take into consideration as we make our way through. And then this is just kind of a further delineation around what those are. Now, utilization is that percentage of the capacity. Now, capacity is the total number of students that can be housed in a given building, okay? So I'll just make up a number. If the school can handle 100 students and you've got 75 kids in there, it's 75% utilized. And so that's the drivers behind that. And we'll have more on that in some of these charts going forward. Similarly, demographics are all those numbers, all those things that are associated with the kids. Where they live, their grade levels, their student numbers, race, ethnicity, all those data points that come back in. And again, programming or the schools, you've got some great programming in this district in terms of trying to meet the needs of your students. And then feeder patterns. Feeder patterns are that K to middle, middle to high, and how they progress through your district. So, your current attendance areas. And I don't know if you realize this, but you are greatly impacted by 2 different lakes. And I get the fun word of saying isthmus, and I'm not very good at that, but it's never have I ever had to say isthmus in conjunction with a school boundary analysis. So Yes, and it presents, look, it kind of goes back to that transportation. It presents some unique challenges, and this is a very unique district in that regard. But here are your current patterns, and we're going to dive more of those. You can go online. There's a great interactive link there, and you can kind of zoom in and out, and you can play with it. You can see it. It's really fun if you're a nerd. So just jump. I shouldn't say it that way. Yeah, really, I should. It's really a lot of fun if you're a data nerd. So jump in there and take a look at it. You can see the different attendance zones. Again, we'll jump into that. And so in terms of complexity, again, we talked about the, your isthmus. You've got extension areas that's kind of unique to this part of the world. You've got the K2, 3, 5s. You've got optional areas for students to choose into a certain school. Non-contiguous boundaries. Now, this is very important. All the word contiguous means is connected. And you've got several district schools that have attendance zones that aren't connected. And what that leads to is island zones, meaning you got the school over here, and you got this one little pod of students over here that comes back and attends into that attendance zone. And we're going to have several of those to kind of talk about here. We talk about feeder patterns, and then again, the natural boundaries. And you've got a few holes actually in the district boundary as to how that works. And so again, the lakes are a big natural boundary that kind of drive some of this process. So again, you can call this draft scenario, draft options. This is really just the conversation starter, okay? And so it's an opportunity. You have a steering committee, a committee made up of over 25 folks from across the district, diverse opinions, and geographically spread out because of the geography of this district. We had to make sure, the district wanted to make sure, district leadership wanted to make sure that they had representation from across the district to kind of weigh in on this. So this was not just MGT coming in saying, hey, how about this? We worked with district leadership and partnership in order to bring these conversation starters forward so everyone can begin the conversation. One important caveat that I should have opened with is because you're here tonight, you have homework. And what that is we are charging you with being community ambassadors. We want you to go back and reach out. I'm charging you. Reach out to 5 people, 5 different families. It can't be all in one family. And I want you to reach out to them and say, hey, go look at the school's website. Go look at this PowerPoint. Go look at this ArcGIS. Take a look at this because the district very much wants to have your input in regards to this because no decisions have been made and they really honestly want community input around this in terms of a viable path forward. So, far west region, okay, so you got your current boundary here and how this all works in the color coding. Now the color coding's tracked to the individual schools and their attendance areas, okay? And so as we come over to the right and working through this, we're working around, now these are your key elements here. Non-contiguous, not connected, transportation times, island zone. We're going to lean into each of these, and Chavez is going to have its own slide here in just a second because it's geographically, their island zones off of this slide. So looking at these crosshatches then show you, again, now we've created a contiguous zone or a connected zone around Crestwood. If you look at the O, change area O in terms of a connection. So all of this is in an attempt to address some of those concerns around the non-contiguous or the non-connected school zones. And it leans back to those neighborhood schools and making those connections. And I know there's a lot to process here. And again, all of this is on the website. So there's so much data here. And I won't apologize for that because it's important that everybody understands and kind of can at least begin to quantify. There's a number pun intended. Can begin to quantify the challenge the district has in terms of this process going forward. And I mentioned Chavez. Here's that island zone we talked about. So you got kids here in this island zone that come back around and attend at Chavez. And this is the current boundary. So when we get in terms of the far west region, these are your current utilizations, your current capacities, the number of students could be in there, that current percentage. And we kind of call it getting to green. Having a student population at about that 75 to 84% takes you into green. So the current and existing. So if these changes were in place today, for school year 2025, those would be the utilizations. And again, a few more green, a little more blue, but we're also making those forecasts going forward, carrying out to 2030 and 2035. And again, some important caveat here, some future some future school sites could help alleviate some capacity pressures. And it also, there's some talk, referendum 24, this is with their updated facility numbers. In the Near West region, again, we're kind of impacting those, we're looking at, now this isn't a guiding principle. We want to note, these are your K2, 3, 5 school models. And in this case, what you have, that's that Chavez Island zone. You've got a non-contiguous area dealing with Thoreau there and transportation time. So as we come over to the other side, what you can see now is more contiguous, more connected school zones. In terms of like change area A is that Chavez slight that goes over to Leopold. And we're going to have more conversations about Lorryman Cary as well in just a second. So when you look at these models in the Near West, again, as you carry across, a little more green, the numbers come down a little bit. Still some questions around overall utilization, but again, more of a balance as we carry forward. And again, those the K2, 3, 5s are partnered in terms of their attendance zones and total capacities. So in the North region, I know this is of a particular interest to some folks in this room. So we'll dwell on this a little bit longer, but in taking a look at this, again, the key things metrics we're dealing with in terms of those guiding principles: imbalance utilization, island zones, non-contiguous in terms of Lakeview there, and again, transportation times when you're coming down from here and coming up. So LNG rezone the non-contiguous zones now come back in, and we're trying to create contiguous zones. So you can see more cohesion around Emberson. Lakeview is a smaller geographic footprint, balancing that utilization. Changes to Gompers in terms of the overall utilization. Lindbergh as well. And then over to Mendota. So you can see a balance then, especially around the connectivity in those contiguous or connected zones. Oh, sorry, I said they're a little longer. Sorry. And again, all of this is on the website. You can take pictures, please take pictures, but you can go into the website and you'll be able to drill in onto this and see all of these numbers, as well as use that ArcGIS link. So again, the key takeaway in here is that imbalance utilization and creating contiguous zones around neighborhood schools. So, getting into the same numbers, what you can see, look, let's do an obvious. A lot of red over here, less red over here. So we're looking at a balance of that utilization over into this current scenario. And also, you'll notice some of the Lakeview, that's also a dual language school. So we know that kids are going to transfer into that, and we're dealing with resident numbers here. So although we're dealing with resident numbers, we have to try and forecast and build capacity for those transfer students into that program. So that is an important caveat in terms of that number. All right, so Lorryman, I told you that we'd come back to Lorryman. Again, a non-contiguous area. We drove by this school today, actually, lovely school, nice campus. We made the mistake of getting there during dismissal, but we made our way through. Look, neighborhood schools impact neighborhoods. Don't show up at 2:30 or 3:30, whatever time the dismissal is, or go a different way. So, Lorryman, but you can see, look, this is the definition of non-contiguous. The zone is not connected. So, we're going to fix that in another model here. So, in taking a look at that, okay, so these Lorryman students then are rezoned into Henderson. You can see how that works in terms of creating that cohesion. And you can see adjustments then for potential Sprecher. So this is the new conversation. There's a lot of conversation in your community about a future potential Sprecher elementary. And so we're going to have one with Sprecher and without Sprecher. This is an example of what this might look at. And starting this conversation, about what that might look like in terms of the location of the property that's available. And you know, the tough thing about schools is a lot of times they're not geographically centered to their attendance zone because that's the property that was available at the time of the construction of the school. So again, correction around the transportation times, non-contiguous, and then this balance of utilization here, as you saw in the earlier charts that Marcy presented. And again, you can kind of see the dark blue kind of transitioning into better numbers, okay? And this is the potential Sprecher school site, helps balance that utilization. And it really, while it does carve into that next door attendance zone, it overall has minimal changes to the larger footprint. And similarly, we mentioned with Sprecher. Now this is without Sprecher in terms of where that would be. Again, the attendance zones, we've got, what happened to them? I worked on this earlier. If you're from there, I apologize. There we go. You just got to roll. Elgin. So, how that kind of rolls up to sweep in some of that spot where Sprecher might have been. So this is without Sprecher in terms of the Far East. Again, addressing the transportation, the non-contiguous or the non-connected area, and that imbalance of utilization that we're dealing with at Kennedy presently. So in doing that, here's what those numbers would be. Again, a little bit better as you transition over and kind of a balance of utilization across that region in terms of the Far East. A little more blue on that screen, perhaps, but a lot less red and a lot less dark blue. And this is balancing without Sprecher being brought into the mix. But, you know, and honestly, when you're going to do that, it's a domino effect. In this modeling, it does impact more students in terms of that region. All right. Did I mention there's a test? Oh, so I'm not apologizing. We wanted all this information on one screen so that you can kind of just do this baseline, a quick reference with the color codings, where it is presently in the existing boundaries, where it would be in terms of scenario configuration. Again, scenario configuration is really conversation starter in terms of input from the district, from the community. And so you can see kind of the color codings. Look, key takeaways. A lot more red and dark blue over here than is over here. And we call it getting to green. A lot more green over here and kind of getting that balance of capacity versus utilization in those facilities. And the referendum 24 schools have those updated capacities in there. And then, of course, the potential school site around Sprecher. So again, a lot of information. This is that same fire hose that your district officials and your school board is going to be drinking out of as we go through this process. The good news is, as was shared earlier, there's a long runway here. And so they're being very deliberate about the steering committee was very deliberate about bringing this information forward so you had an opportunity to see it, not necessarily digest it all in one meal, but to see it and understand the scope of the challenge and to have this information then go back out into your community to begin the conversation. All right, so again, that same thing's talking about, this is the draft scenario, okay? So if Marcy had the earlier chart at present, this is if we brought this scenario forward, where your capacities would be, the number of students that should be housed in the building, and you have a diversity of buildings in terms of size as well. The combined schools, the K2, 3, 5s are right here. You can kind of see where this hits. If you recall earlier, several of these, especially like Kennedy, those bar graphs were shooting out the top. And similarly, again, this one has the potential of a Sprecher in it, and kind of see where Sprecher hits in terms of the overall capacity. You know, and I won't lie, there's been a lot of work to get to this point because you had a lot of disconnected attendance zones. I mean, you saw that in this, not to call anything out, those happen for a variety of reasons over historic, especially districts that are this old. So in terms of looking at that and creating that, this is the scenario, the conversation starters that were brought forward. Oh, what to expect next. So this, you can kind of run this counterclockwise or clockwise. The intentionality behind all of this is to be transparent. to share. There's no hidden set of numbers. There's no information out there that you've not seen here. There are larger reports that are on the school's website if you really want to do a deep dive. But the key point of that is being transparent about the information. Again, guiding principles, community input forms. There's also an online survey. So for those same friends and folks that you know that couldn't be here tonight, we're going to have an online survey at the end that'll be posted actually on Monday. So they'll be able to go in and see a recording of this. And they'll be able to access the PowerPoint, access that interactive ArcGIS link. They'll be able to take an online survey that'll be the same questions, a little different format, but the same questions that we're going to pose to you tonight. Iterative is just a fancier way of saying we're just going back and forth with this. What do you think of that? What about this? What about this? What if we made that change? What if we did this change? What if we moved these kids over here? Because we had all those tiny attendant, how many study areas did we have? Hundreds of study areas. Was it that many? Oh, wow. So again, this iterative process of how do we move this here? Because it's almost a butterfly effect. Because when you move one kid over here in this little attendance zone over there, it can impact the overall map. Again, informative. I know there's a lot of information. I'm not apologizing for that because we wanted you to see this. We wanted you to see the scope of the challenge. And then again, it's all data driven. It's important. The front load of this, the most important part is community feedback. But a very important part of this process is making sure that the information we have at the front is clean, good data that can be brought forward to make accurate forecasts so that people can make considered decisions going forward.